Today, Outside the Lines. Pro football's violence has put concussions and their long-term effects on the front page. The league now says it accepts the premise, but until recently, the NFL and its doctors denied that concussions could lead to later impairment for players.
The answer is the medical experts are no better than I would with respect to that.
At this time, it is not possible to specifically determine the long-term risk of a single or repeated concussion.
This is now a crisis for the NFL. Thousands of former players claim the league concealed medical research proving that link. Today exclusively, documentation that while the NFL was denying the link between concussions and long-term risks, it embraced that very link in awarding disability benefits to several players.
It's pretty devastating evidence that they knew clear back in 1999.
Among those cases, that of the late Hall of Fame center, Mike Webster.
Hell, I don't know what I'm saying. I'm just very confused.
The linkage was clear even then to the doctor chosen by the disability board who examined Webster and questions the NFL's denials.
I don't think it's rocket science to say that there's chronic injury from head injury in football. I don't know where they're coming from.
Today, an Outside the Lines exclusive. What may be the smoking gun in the concussion lawsuits against the National Football League.
And now, reporting for Outside the Lines, Bob Lee.
Yesterday, in the wake of Sunday's concussions to 3 starting NFL quarterbacks, the league's commissioner, Roger Goodell, spoke at Harvard University in his continuing public campaign to position the league as a leader on brain trauma and player safety. But in prior years, the NFL was criticized as anything but. Nearly 4,000 former players are suing, claiming the NFL hid or ignored medical research on the long-term health impact of concussions. The central question, what did the NFL know about concussions and when did it know that? Today exclusively, the results of an ongoing joint investigation by Outside the Lines and PBS Frontline as we document that even as the NFL was denying any link between concussions and later mental illness, its disability board made awards which acknowledge that very connection. Mark Fainaru-Wada reports.
3 years ago, Congress grilled the NFL.
I just asked you a simple question. What's the answer? The answer is the medical experts are no better than I would with respect to that, but we are not.
For years, NFL-appointed doctors had repeatedly denied any link between football and brain damage.
Therefore, at this time, it is not possible to specifically determine the long-term risk of a single or repeated concussion.
The NFL's concussion experts even wrote at one point, professional football players do not sustain frequent repetitive blows to the brain on a regular basis.
It sort of reminds me of the tobacco companies pre-90s when they kept saying, no, there's no link between smoking and damage to your health or ill health effects.
What Congress didn't know was that although league-appointed doctors were publicly denying a link between football and long-term brain injuries, the NFL Pension and Disability Board was quietly handing out well over $1 million in benefits based on that very premise. Outside the Lines has learned the board ruled in at least 3 cases that football caused the players severe impairments. The board's rulings raise new questions about what the league knew and when it knew it. Questions at the heart of lawsuits brought by nearly 4,000 former players alleging the league deliberately ignored and actively concealed medical research and critical facts.
Well, it shows they had knowledge. It's an admission by the NFL pension board at that time.
Bob Fitzsimmons was the lawyer for the late Mike Webster, a Hall of Fame center who suffered from crippling dementia. In 1999, Webster was granted disability benefits, but he appealed to the board for more, and his estate eventually sued and won. The board, though, never disputed Webster's condition or its cause.
According to the records in a specific case of Mike Webster, they knew that repetitive head trauma or concussions can cause permanent disability.
In a May 2000 letter, the director of the NFL's benefits plan wrote to Fitzsimmons, "The retirement board determined that Mr. Webster's disability arose while he was an active player, and that medical reports indicate that his disability is the result of head injuries he suffered as a football player with the Pittsburgh Steelers and Kansas City Chiefs.
It's pretty devastating evidence that they knew clear back in 1999.
Despite the NFL's disability board making the connection between football and chronic brain damage, the NFL's own study group on concussions would repeatedly deny the link for years. It wasn't until after the 2009 congressional hearing that the commissioner's office acknowledged the connection, telling the New York Times that it's quite obvious from the medical research that's been done that concussions can lead to long-term problems.
If the NFL takes the position that they didn't know or that weren't armed with evidence that concussions can cause total disability, permanent brain injury in 1999, that evidence trumps anything they say.
The NFL declined to be interviewed for this story. Neither Fitzsimmons nor Webster's family is involved with the current lawsuits against the league. Broke and occasionally homeless, Webster, who won 4 Super Bowls with the Pittsburgh Steelers, died in 2002 at age 50. He spoke with ESPN 5 years before his death, as he was struggling with dementia.
The things we do to one another, okay, hell, I don't know what I'm saying. I'm just tired and confused right now. That's why I say I can't really, I can't say it the way I want to say it. I could say I could answer this real easy at other times, but right now I'm just tired.
He was somewhat childlike, as I remember in interviewing him. I mean, he was really disabled, clearly.
The NFL's disability board hired Cleveland neurologist Edward Westbrook to examine Webster after 4 other doctors concluded head injuries from football caused his impairment. Westbrook had never commented publicly, but spoke to Outside the Lines with permission from Webster's family.
I didn't have any trouble saying that I thought that he had head injury related brain disease.
Was there any doubt in your mind that it was football that had caused?
No doubt, because there's nothing else in the history, and the records as they are that I reviewed did not indicate there was any other etiology or cause.
The NFL's disability board then approved benefits based on the 5 doctors' findings that repeated blows to the head from football caused Webster's brain damage. Yet, within a few years, the league's concussion experts would begin publishing their denials.
I don't think it's rocket science to say that there's chronic injury from head injury in football. I mean, we've all talked about it. I don't know where they're coming from.
22 years after Mike Webster completed a career as one of the game's greatest centers, he has another legacy: the battle for the NFL to recognize brain injuries as an inherent risk in football.
It consumed him. He felt like he was David up against Goliath, but he was not going to quit.
Pam and Mike Webster were married for 28 years. She says she began noticing big changes by the end of Webster's NFL career, and that his dementia eventually led to their divorce. How did the league's public position on the connection between football and brain trauma over the years resonate with you?
I think it sucks, really. I mean, to be really totally honest, it just sucks. I mean, now they're doing a lot of redecorating their stance. They're making it look good, like we care. And I think the NFL tried to keep this covered as long as they could.
Court records from the Webster disability lawsuit reveal that starting in 1997, the NFL's board approved benefits for at least 2 additional unidentified players based on football causing their brain injuries.
It's not necessarily the acknowledgement, it's what they did in reaction to it. If you know somebody's being injured or you have an occupational type injury, that's basically what this is. It's like miners have black lung because that's part of the occupation. A lot of people believe that there's a greater responsibility of the people making the money to react to that and to try to protect the participants.
There's a slow degrading of my memory, and it's really scary. I'm afraid of the future.
Webster's friend and contemporary, Jerry Sullivan, was a Cleveland Browns offensive lineman. Like Webster, he was granted disability benefits in a ruling that suggested football caused his cognitive impairment. Another case amid the league's public denials of a link between the game and brain damage. This is the 60-year-old Sullivan's first interview about his fading short-term memory and the effects of football.
My memory is being affected by all the times that I was concussed, or at least got my bell rung, or however you want to put it.
Sullivan played 8 years in the NFL, and now he's one of the thousands of players suing the league.
Do you have any sense of the number of concussions you had over your career?
Well, I would say it was more than a dozen.
If you knew then what you know now, would you do it again? Would you play?
No, I don't believe I would. I'm worried that if, this continues at the pace it's kind of gone at the last couple of years, then I'm not going to be worth a crap when I'm, 65. And I love the game, but I don't think I would have played.
Mark Fainaru-Wada reporting, and now Mark joins me from Boston. All right, Mark, take us inside this joint investigation outside the lines in PBS Frontline.
Well, Bob, essentially it's born out of actually a book project that myself and my colleague and brother Steve Fainaru at ESPN are working on for Crown and about the issue of football and head trauma. And out of that was born a companion documentary that they're working on about this same issue. And as we began down the process of looking into the history of this issue, we certainly looked closely at Mike Webster's case. And there had been a lot of fantastic reporting done, including by our own Greg Garber at ESPN, on Webster's plight. One of the things we were struck by, though, that we found were these documents that showed very clearly that the Disability Board, rather than dispute the disability, had actually acknowledged that Webster was disabled directly from football. And that obviously resonated with us, given the league's public position and opposite over the next several years.
You've been able to fully substantiate at least 3 cases, including Webster's. The other 2 are anonymous. But as you and Steve write online, there is a suspicion and other sources indicating there could be even more cases, correct, that are attributed by the Pension and Disability Board to playing career and brain trauma.
That's right. We believe that there are several other cases. The case of Jerry Sullivan we included in the piece. We think that is clearly a piece, although the language from the Disability Board is a bit loose on that. There are at least 2 other cases we were told about by a source, but we weren't able to independently confirm that, so we didn't go with it. The league previously, in a sort of passing statement in the New York Times, had referenced that there were some cases years ago, but it was unclear who those were or to the extent that they were acknowledged.
Certainly an important question here, aside from how many such cases there might be and how it's utilized by some of the attorneys in the case, and I'll be talking with one shortly, is even in the normal course of business, let's take the Mike Webster case off the board. What is the traffic, the correspondence, the knowledge such between the league office, the National Football League, and what the league will say is an independent board, the Pension and Disability Board? Just in the normal course of business, how much does the league office know about what's going on there and to what level of detail?
Well, I think the short answer to that, Bob, is we don't know. It's certainly an issue we really struggled to find answers to and continue to. The one thing, here's what we do know. The league's position on this is it is independent. The Disability Board is independent of the league itself. The reality is the board is born out of the CBA. There are 3 owners' representatives on the Disability Board. There are 3 players' representatives on the Disability Board. And then the commissioner has a spot on the Disability Board, which is usually taken up by a representative of his who doesn't have a vote but is present. At the same time, that MTBI committee, the concussion committee that was formed by the commissioner, answered to the commissioner. So all the research that it was presenting was going directly to the commissioner. So the link there obviously is, the commissioner's office is well aware of what's going on with the MTBI committee, and then the commissioner has a spot on this disability board.
All right, Mark, great reporting. It's an understatement. And for much more on this development, you can check the online piece reflecting the reporting of Mark Fainaru-Wada and Steve Fainaru. ESPN.com is your locale for mixed messages on brain injuries. Let's now turn to Lester Munson, ESPN.com senior writer and legal analyst, author of a .com piece as well on this topic. Andrew Brandt, who is an attorney and has also worked as a player agent, also in the front office of the Packers. And we say hello to Jason Lukasevic, who represents several hundred former players in their concussion lawsuits against the National Football League. Thank you all. Jason, the documentation you've just heard reported, what does that mean to you?
Well, it shows three things. It shows actual knowledge on the hands of the league. It shows that concussions cause total disability. And it shows with that actual knowledge, they could have presented that to the players that play the game.
Is this a smoking gun?
In some respects, yeah, absolutely it is. It's one of many smoking guns. It shows actual knowledge about concussions and an admission by the league.
What are some of the other smoking guns, quickly?
Dr. Amalu's finding of CTE in Mike Webster was one. Number two was the findings of the Mild Traumatic Brain Injury Committee trying to refute what Dr. Amalu found in their publishings in the Neurosurgery Journal.
A lot more to touch on with you, but Lester, let me get your take on the importance of this reporting. We've heard it described possibly as a smoking gun. Your take?
I think it is a smoking gun, but it's a smoking gun that does have some limits. As Jason pointed out, it does show that the league at a certain point had knowledge of the connection between concussions and brain damage, but it's not a totally legally binding conclusion. As the thousands of players who have now filed their claims, as they proceed with those claims, they are all going to have to still prove that A, they had concussions, and B, the concussions caused crippling injuries. Even though we have this compelling evidence, it's not totally conclusive. There's a legal term, collateral estoppel. That would be a huge breakthrough for the players in these concussion cases, but this evidence, these documents that Mark has dug up, are not quite yet at the point of collateral estoppel. So it's very important, but it's not completely definitive.
Andrew, obviously we invited the league to comment for the story. They declined comment, but the league will say, presumably, that this Pension and Disability Board is a creature of the union contract. It's not a creature of the NFL office. And so that claim of independence, how much water does that hold?
Well, I don't think it's completely independent, Bob, but I think it's more independent than we think. It's not exactly the NFL ruling on this. I understand people say, well, the NFL is now saying a causal link. It's the board, and the board is a CBA creation, as Mark talked about, 3 from the owner's side, 3 from the player's side, and 1 designated by the commissioner. Just as we have arbitrations that decide between a team and a league, just as we saw the appeals panel in the Saints Bounty case, that had someone from the union side, someone from the league side, someone jointly picked. These are not the league. These are not the union. They're at least supposed to be a representative of both, so we have some independence to this. So I think when the league says these boards are not the league, I think there's some substance to that. Clearly this is not good news. This is not a report that shows the NFL is unaware of all this at the same time the Brain Committee is saying there is no causal link. That's not good news. But no 2 concussions are alike. We don't know how many of these cases like Webster or similar to Webster were denied benefits. So we don't know. Everything's going to be different here, and we do have to take a step back and see if this is a true smoking gun or something less than that.
Jason, is the issue whether an individual player can prove he has a concussion from what happened on the field, or is the overarching issue the allegation that the NFL had this information and did nothing with it?
Sure. In our lawsuit, there's a claim for negligence. What you have to show is they failed to warn. This is a smoking gun because it shows they failed to warn because they had actual knowledge. Each individual player will have to prove his own causation. So it's not the end of the lawsuit. I don't want my players to get excited that this is over. The other thing that's very important to understand, and you could find some of this information out, for instance, if you follow some of the blogging that are done by the former players such as Dave Pear, you go to davepear.com. What he's talked about over the years is he's talked about the leagues has their own attorneys that act as advisors to the plan, that are attorneys for the league, but yet are supposed to represent the interests of the players. These specific attorneys are involved with these decisions of the retirement board. So there is actual knowledge in the league's hand. I dispute what was said about the fact that, well, maybe they know, maybe they don't know. Their attorneys are there.
Lester, there's also the question of what the science was exactly at the time and what the league's exact position was as far as denying any links or what they were promulgating as policy.
In any case involving injuries, Bob, there is always going to be some doubt about the science. Any lawyer can find a doctor who will support that lawyer's position. There's always going to be expert testimony in which they contradict each other. But the finding of the retirement board on these cases is very important, compelling evidence. There will be other evidence that contradicts it, but because the NFL was a party to this determination, because, as Jason says, these lawyers were there, it is very important and compelling, if not conclusive evidence.
Andrew, it's been accepted gospel for years that no league does public relations better than the National Football League. You go back to the era of Pete Rozelle, who began his professional life in public relations, and certainly we saw the commissioner yesterday speaking at Harvard. The league has been out there very proactive with Football USA, talking about teaching safe tackling. Obviously, managing a PR issue is a consideration here. At what point does the PR dimension of this become overbearing for the league?
Well, that's there is obviously legal issues, and this causal link is a huge factor going in. But this is a PR issue. These lawsuits are going to take a lot of time. We're talking about thousands of plaintiffs. So right now the issue is going to be PR. And as you mentioned, the commissioner giving a talk yesterday at Harvard. This past week, Mike Vick's knocked out, Alex Smith knocked out, Jay Cutler knocked out. Whether any of them come back this week is up to debate. In a past time and place, maybe they all would have been back. Who knows? But this is right on the tips of the tongues of everyone talking about the NFL. It's a huge PR issue, especially when you see mentally and physically infirm people like Mike Webster out there against the big bad NFL. It's got to be managed. You're seeing a lot of speeches out there, and that's what's happening. The NFL is trying to manage the message here and take players off the field, which is a good thing.
Jason, you're litigating this. Where does this stand, and in whose court is the ball right now?
Well, we just finished the briefing portion of the motions to dismiss filed by both the NFL and Rydell. They have until December 17th to file a responsive or reply brief, and then from there it will be in the judge's hands.
All right. What weight will there be, Jason, at trial if it gets to trial, playing clips such as that Mike Webster tape?
It's very powerful. Just hearing the stories of any of the individual plaintiffs and seeing the struggles they go through. You know, one thing that people forget is these guys, when they played the game of football for the most part, you're talking about guys that played in the 1980s that were making $80,000 per year, that were not given anything once they left the league because they had to play at least 4 credited seasons. These guys are really hurting. They're hurting with their brain injury. They're struggling with their lives. They're struggling with their families.
Much more on all of this. The story by Mark Fainaru-Wada and Steve Fainaru online at ESPN.com. Lester, Andrew, and Jason, thank you all. Appreciate your time today. Check our page, facebook.com/OTL. Follow me on Twitter at Bob Lee ESPN. Download the podcast at ESPN.com or subscribe for free at iTunes. We step aside. We'll be right back.